Most mornings begin with responding to someone else. A message from a boss, a family ask, or a carefully curated post to keep up appearances. And those tiny yeses quietly decide how your whole day runs. It can feel selfish to stop. Saying no once leads to a ripple, a cool reaction from a friend, a follow-up from a manager, a guilty hour thinking you should have helped, and that initial awkwardness explains why people go back to people-pleasing. You suddenly find time that wasn't there before. An evening free of favors becomes a run, a class, or the first chapter of a book you keep postponing. That reclaimed hour changes your energy, your confidence, and what you choose next. People around you change, too. Some drift away because the connection was mostly convenience, while others tighten because boundaries reveal who's really supportive. Bosses test limits, partners show true colors, and the social noise gets quieter. The shifts aren't dramatic at first. Little choices, one declined favor, one solo weekend, one extra hour for your side project, compound into clearer priorities, and over weeks you start to see how living for yourself reshapes daily life. Later you'll hear 3 simple, concrete examples of how that first no plays out in real life. Noticing the small freedoms, daily choices you reclaim. Mornings feel crowded with tiny compromises. You pick a shirt that won't draw comments, skip breakfast because everyone else is late, scroll through messages before you even wash your face. Psychologists call the slow erosion of willpower from making lots of small decisions decision fatigue, and it shows up in those first 30 minutes when you hand over choice to habit or habit's cousin, approval. Choose your own cereal instead of the one that's expected, and you'll notice a small ease in the rest of the morning. The brain spends less energy negotiating with imagined critics and more on whatever actually matters to you. Concrete changes happen fast. Laying out a preferred outfit the night before, keeping a bowl of fruit you like on the counter, or setting your phone to quiet until you're dressed, and those small shifts lower the friction for later choices. At the office, the tug to accept extra tasks to be seen as helpful is constant and quiet. Saying yes because it's easier than explaining a boundary eats into focus and leaves you with shallow work and a longer to-do list. When you start declining a meeting that doesn't need your presence, or asking for a deadline that fits your workflow, your output often improves. For example, swapping a late meeting for a 30-minute walk after work can restore concentration for the next day. The reclaimed time isn't dramatic, but it compounds. These are not grand gestures, telling a teammate you can't pick up their Slack this week, or turning off email notifications after 7 p.m. Yet they reset expectations and make future choices simpler. Family and friend obligations create their own invisible script, arriving on time to a dinner you dread, pretending to like a gift, keeping a conversation going past your limit. The tension of wanting to be liked keeps you tied to small acts of self-erasure. Opting out of one event, or offering a different kind of presence like a phone call instead of a long visit, reduces that tension. Practical examples include bringing the dish you actually enjoy rather than the one you should bring, or muting a group chat that spikes your stress. Both choices change how often you're pulled into other people's agendas. These micro-reclaims cut down on cumulative resentment and free up emotional bandwidth for relationships you invest in willingly. At home, the freedoms look less dramatic but feel closer to who you are. Choosing plants over pricey art, wearing sneakers to a casual party, making a weekday ritual of 15 minutes reading before bed. Each small preference you honor teaches you something about your tastes and sets a gentle precedent for bigger decisions later. That cozy reading nook you created because you wanted quiet becomes a place you protect, and protecting it makes saying no to unnecessary social obligations easier. The practical result shows up as steadier sleep, clearer weekends, and a sense that your time belongs to you in increments rather than being parceled out to everyone else. Small freedoms accumulate. They change the texture of ordinary days and, over time, they change the map you use to make bigger life choices. The emotional shift, relief, guilt, and honest self-talk. People who stop prioritizing others often report an immediate drop in their daily tension. It feels like the constant mental checklist that lived in the back of your head finally quiets down. You might notice fewer late-night emails or fewer double-booked weekends after you begin saying no. For example, someone who declines an extra weekend shift suddenly has 2 full free days to rest, which directly reduces fatigue and the sense of being overwhelmed. The relief usually comes before the explanations do. Guilt tends to follow relief, especially when the people you care about express disappointment. One parent who says no to driving a neighbor's child to practice can feel the lightness of reclaimed time and then the tightness in their chest when the neighbor scowls. The cause and effect is simple. Doing less for others removes obligations, and the social expectation of reciprocity triggers guilt because your identity has been tied to being helpful. That tug-of-war invites a different kind of inner voice. Honest self-talk begins as a small corrective commentary, factual, not self-punishing. Instead of replaying the worst-case scenario, someone might say to themselves, "First was asked, first am choosing based on my schedule," and that shifts the emotional tone. In one concrete example, a graphic designer who stopped taking every client revision started narrating the choice to herself: "First meet my deadlines and preserve my health," and over weeks the narration cut the frequency of anxious rumination. Relief, guilt, and honest self-talk rarely arrive in neat succession. They oscillate, sometimes within a single day, like when you feel proud for setting a boundary at work but then ache to help a colleague who's overwhelmed. Honest self-talk acts as the mediator. It doesn't erase guilt, but it explains it, locates responsibility, and often reduces the need for constant reparative action. Over time, that pattern creates an internal standard that matches actions to values instead of reactions to pressure, and everyday examples, declining an offer, delegating a task, skipping an event, become the moments where the new emotional balance is practiced. Relationships rebalanced. Who stays? Who changes? People adjust their expectations when someone changes their availability and boundaries. This is visible in small actions. A neighbor who used a borrow garden tool stops knocking because you no longer accommodate their last-minute requests, or a group chat that thins out because you refuse to be the default planner every weekend. The cause is simple and practical. Availability signals value to others, and altering that signal forces people to reassess what they want from the relationship. Concrete examples show this clearly. Co-workers who counted on you to take over extra shifts will ask someone else, while distant relatives who relied on your emotional labor may only reach out for holidays. A smaller, steadier circle usually stays. True friends tend to keep meeting for coffee even after you say no to the imposition of favors. Partners who respect your autonomy adjust their expectations naturally, and family members who understand reciprocity will step up or negotiate new arrangements. For instance, a longtime friend who once dropped by whenever they needed help continues to check in because the bond isn't transactional. The difference is in tone and frequency, not in disappearance. Some relationships don't end so much as shift roles and rules. People who once treated you as a safety valve or unpaid helper must either change how they interact or create distance. A sibling who expected you to handle their paperwork may hire help, or they may resent the change and drift away. The relationship becomes less one-sided either by renegotiation or attrition. In practical terms, this looks like new agreements about time, money, and emotional support. Colleagues reassign tasks, a partner starts contributing to household chores, or a friend learns to offer support without asking for continual favors. Space opens up for connections that match who you are now. Less time spent rescuing others means more time to pursue activities and communities that reflect your interests, and those new interactions attract people who value you without needing you to be endlessly accommodating. A concrete example is signing up for a weekend pottery class and meeting people who want to collaborate on art projects rather than borrow emotional bandwidth. The emotional effect is mixed. Relief and loneliness can coexist, but the net result is a social landscape where relationships are more balanced and, often, more sustainable. Practical consequences: time, energy, and boundaries. Many people's calendars are full of other people's priorities, leaving little time for their own. You start saying yes to favors, meetings, and plans that chip away at evenings and weekends. The effect is cumulative. A missed hour here, 2 hours there, and suddenly hobbies, exercise, or focused work are gone. For example, someone who routinely volunteers for extra shifts at a school fair can find that the unpaid hours erase the block they once used for writing or studying. Most of the exhaustion that follows comes from emotional labor as much as from business. Constantly meeting others' emotional needs, smoothing tensions, being always available, fixing problems, burns the kind of energy that sleep alone doesn't restore. A common pattern shows up at work. People who answer emails after dinner report foggier mornings and poorer concentration, and that diminished focus often creates longer workdays the next day. The practical consequence is simple. When you stop organizing your life around everyone else, the energy you use to spend apportioning goodwill and managing expectations gets redirected into clearer thinking and better sustained effort on what matters to you. Saying no reshapes relationships, and boundaries are the tool that does this work. When someone tells family they can't host every weekend, or when a professional declines non-urgent calls after hours, that creates predictable space in the week. The immediate outcome is more available time and less decision fatigue, because fewer anno domini hoc demands mean fewer micro-decisions. There can be pushback. A friend who counted on spontaneous favors may grumble. Over time, though, consistent limits reset expectations and often leave stronger, more honest connections in their place. Small habits pile up into big differences. Blocking 2 or 3 mornings a week for focused work, or choosing one night a week to turn off notifications, reallocates regular pockets of time into sustained projects or rest. Practical examples include splitting household chores with a partner instead of taking them all on, or batching errands into one afternoon so weekdays stay clear. The trade-offs are visible. You may lose some surface-level social ties, but you gain fewer interruptions, steadier energy, and clearer priorities that let you finish tasks and actually enjoy the free time you reclaimed. Building a new narrative, habits and values you choose. Most people's weekdays are organized around other people's schedules, bosses, children's activities, and social obligations. That tension shows up as habit. The reflex to check email first thing, the automatic yes to a last-minute favor, the scroll through social feeds in bed. If a morning starts by reacting to other people's requests, decisions feel thin by midday. Swap a reactive first hour for a short, chosen ritual, 10 minutes of journaling, a walk, a cup of tea without screens, and the rest of the day gets a different frame. Priorities follow the frame because attention is limited and what you attend to shapes what you value. There's a slow shift when values become deliberate instead of inherited, and it changes who you spend time with and why. People who decide that clarity matters, for example, stop answering messages immediately and block 2 daily slots for catching up. The effect is predictable, fewer interruptions and clearer plans. Someone who chooses curiosity over approval might enroll in a class and stop curating every post. That choice costs social polish at first but creates new friendships tied to interests rather than obligation. When values are chosen, boundaries follow naturally because behavior has to match words or else people notice, and that mismatch forces renegotiation of relationships. Small habits rewrite identity in ways you can actually see. A 10-minute habit repeated every morning stacks into competence and confidence, which then makes it easier to say no without anxiety. A concrete instance looks like this. A parent who stopped agreeing to host every weekend meal started alternating weekends with siblings and kept one afternoon for silent reading. The result was less exhaustion and fewer resentful remarks, and the family adapted by shifting expectations. The cause and effect is simple. Repeated actions change expectations, expectations change social pressure, and social pressure changes choices. Changing the environment nudges new habits into place without drama. People who put their phone in another room during focused work end up working longer stretches because the barrier to pick it up is higher. Unsubscribing from group chats reduces the number of prompts that pull attention away. A practical example is shifting email checking to 2 set times. Projects move forward more quickly because attention stays on tasks long enough to produce momentum. These are not grand reforms but experiments. Try a small change, watch what shifts in energy or response, and let the observed effects guide the next choice. Ever wake up feeling like you're living someone else's plan? When you stop living for others, a few clear things shift. You get time back because you stop saying yes to things that drain you. Your choices start matching what actually matters so work and hobbies stop feeling hollow. Anxiety eases when you aren't constantly performing. Some friendships deepen and some fade, and setting simple boundaries frees up energy for concrete things like painting on Saturday mornings or having longer dinners with people who really listen. It can feel scary at first. Say no to an extra shift and suddenly you have a Sunday morning to try that pottery class, or tell a friend you can't host every event and you make space to actually be present when you do hang out. Those small moves change your days, and over weeks they change how you see yourself. You might worry you'll hurt people you love. That's a real worry, and if this conversation landed with you even a little, there's a playlist with gentle steps and real stories that show how others navigated the same fears. If you'd like more, follow along and those videos will arrive in your feed so you can pick ideas when you're ready. Progress rarely arrives as a headline moment. In the next videos, first I'll share a recorded conversation with someone who rebuilt their week after shedding people-pleasing habits, a simple walkthrough for setting one boundary this month, and a handful of tiny daily practices people actually stuck with. No grand promises, just practical examples so you can try what feels right, at your own pace, and know you're not alone.